counted me out. Yeah. So many counted me out. Don't count me out, I'm not through. I've got so much in my life to do. Don't count me out, it's not over for me. I'm moving forward and you can't stop me. Count me out, I'm not through. I've got so much in my life to do. Don't count me out, it's not over for me. I'm moving forward and you can't stop me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Don't you ever count me out. They underestimate me, never see what I can see. There is a reason why I'm here. I'm here, why? The fact that I am standing reflects a greater calling. I am stronger, why? Don't count me out, I'm not through. I have got so much in my life to do. Don't count me out, it's not over for me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Count me out, I'm not through. I've got so much in my life to do. Don't count me out, it's not over for me. I'm moving forward and you can't stop me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Don't you ever count me out. Your survival is driving them crazy. They don't know how you make it, but the fighter in you is not lazy, leaving them disappointed. But you never quit, you never doubt, you always keep the faith, knowing there will be a brighter day. Don't count me out, I'm not through. I've got so much in my life to do. Don't count me out, it's not over for me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Count me out, I'm not through. I've got so much in my life to do. Don't count me out, it's not over for me. Moving forward and you can't stop me. Don't you ever count me out. 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 Even when the odds are against me, the cards are stacked against me, I will never, hey, even when the odds are against me, the cards are stacked against me, I will never, hey, don't you ever count me out.
In your glory and majesty, I search for your wisdom, only to come short of your magnitude and power. For your strength alone is matchless, and your mercy incomprehensible. Oh Lord, you are the wonderful one. As I splendor in your creation that surrounds me every morning, as I behold your congregation, that's a reflection of your glory. What an honor to be drafted into the army of your authority. Oh Lord, you are the wonderful one. Who can compare to and your mercy incomprehensible. Oh Lord, you are the wonderful one. You are the source of all uniqueness, for uniqueness comes from thee. And as I think of all your power, it makes me drop down to my knees. Your love extended beyond the faults of my life, and you saw just what I needed. Oh Lord, you are the wonderful one. Who can compare to the likes of you? No one. And who could have made the sacrifice but you? No one. But at your name all demons tremble, and your power we proclaim. And every day you grant new mercies, and your faithfulness the same. Oh Lord, you are. Oh Lord, you
Okay, I have my microphone in front of me, and I have two others in the studio. You can now see them. I'm Pastor Bruce Wall. I have been broadcasting this morning, and I just finished an exhausting broadcast with a very gifted pastor whom I love and support, and Pastor Randy Neighbors. And we have a broadcast entitled The Two Young Men. Both of us are very young. And I said both of us are very young.
Yes, very young.
No affirmation at all. No. Pastor Hall says, I'm trying to get my stuff together. I'm not going to respond to you. So we have Sister Falasha, and we have Pastor Franklin Hobbs, who are in the studio with me, and we're still experimenting with a news segment on Tuesdays at 10 a.m., as long as they are available to do this. And we were talking, Falasha was talking to us about the different stories that she has to present to us today. And after Pastor Hobbs and I heard the number of stories that she has researched and has ready to go, Pastor Hobbs and I are going to sit back and put our feet up and say, Sister Falasha, go ahead and share with us. Let me turn your mic on. Number 2.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you.
And you can hear yourself.
Yes. I
You
can.
know, that's why we say to people to always wear your headsets. People don't want to wear it, but wear your headset, because I might be talking or saying something. You're off the air. I don't know it because I'm engaged in something else, so you can hear it. So why don't you share some of the news that you have to offer the audience today?
Sure. So it's Tuesday. It's the first day of the week for us, right? Our working weeks. Well, some of us. Pastor Hobbs. And I thought, why not just find out what everyone has been searching, what topics people have been searching on Google and TikTok this weekend, right? So there's this concept involving virtual replicas of physical objects or systems used exclusively in industries like manufacturing and construction to optimize operations and simulate scenarios. And that's called digital twin. Another topic is AI code assistant, which is not a surprise, right? Artificial intelligence code assistant. I need one of those. What happened?
I'm on the Apple thing, bringing the Apple. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm just going through Book Talk, a popular TikTok sub-community where users discuss and recommend books. Wow, that's interesting. So it's making it a go-to place for book lovers, which is very exciting for me because now I can go to TikTok and hear what people have. Anyways, and then we have TikTok ads. People are increasingly using TikTok for business, right? So they're starting to purchase ads and figure out how to, use videos, what type of videos, what type of platform, so forth and so on. CBG gummies. Okay, so I was like, CBG? I thought it was CBD. So I thought it was a typo. No, it's CBG. And it is cannabigerol, CANNABIGEROL, which is gaining popularity for its potential health benefits without psychoactive effects of THC. So people are interested in finding out how to be healthy with cannabigerol. Okay. Then Brightwheel, which is an app that connects parents with teachers, which we're searching during the summer when kids are out of school, whatever.
It connects parents with teachers?
Yes. So that they can, which is good, I think, allowing them to track the children's progress and communicate effectively. And it has become quite popular in educational settings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have an app like that. I don't remember, but I should probably. Anyways, so yes, that is a good app, right? Because sometimes you just can't make it to the parent-teachers meetings, and they're not as effective anyway. So I guess you just have like a direct contact with your children's teacher at any time. Regenerative agriculture. This is sustainable farming practice. This sustainable farming practice aims to improve the environment through methods that enhance soil health and biodiversity. Regenerative agriculture. Okay. I don't know. I'm just giving you this. And then permanent jewelry. Jewelry without clasps, often welded together, symbolizing a permanent bond. This trend is rising, particularly in rings and bracelets. Right? What is that? I can't even conceptualize that. I don't know. I would think permanent jewelry would be like a tattoo. That's what I thought, but it's not.
What is it?
It's permanent jewelry without clasps, often welded together. I don't know. And I didn't even bother to search because this was just supposed to be like a quick, these are the topics that people were searching over the weekend.
Interesting.
But in real news, in Jamaica, of course, the Jamaican government has tabled a $1.3 trillion budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025. And this budget includes significant allocations for non-debt recurrent expenditures, capital expenditure, debt, and debt servicing. Notably, it includes 11 to 12 billion for major health infrastructure improvements, such as modernizing hospitals and health centers. Yay! That is so important. This budget reflects the government's commitment to addressing historical challenges with public sector compensation and continuing investment in infrastructure and human capital. That is exciting. Thank you, Andrew Holness. You are a great prime minister so far. And then the Bank of Jamaica has reported unprecedented economic and financial stability in the country. Jamaica's debt to GDP ratio has nearly halved from 146.5% in 2013 to 78% in 2023. That's great. Unemployment has significantly decreased and the country's net international reserves have grown substantially, underscoring the effectiveness of the IMF-supported economic reform program. And then they're looking into climate change resilience. A $6.9 million budget allocation has been made to enhance Jamaica's resilience to climate change through the pilot program for climate resilience 2. This program includes various initiatives aimed at improving adaptive capacities in critical sectors, supporting climate-smart businesses, and conducting vulnerability assessments and awareness programs. I've already started that work, guys. You can call me. I mean, that's all I have, unless you want me to continue. And I don't want to continue. I want you guys, this is a shared news broadcast that we're testing out. So what do you have, Pastor Hobbs?
What I have basically, again, I don't have a plethora. I was encouraged, again, the instruction. I thought.
Did you see the expression on her face?
No.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
I thought I was to do 1 or 2 segments, so doing that quite candidly. What I really continued was in the same vein, of what I was talking about on our inaugural broadcast about the courts preparing to give restorative justice a try. That was in the Commonwealth Beacon, and that was on February 13th. However, the most recent iteration of the Bay State Banner front page also talked a little bit about that story, and I think it was important, as you had some questions, Pastor Bruce, about the Chief Justice Kimberly Budd. So Chief Justice Kimberly Budd is a champion of restorative justice. Let me get a little assistance here with my eyes. Okay, so this article is by Jamra Perry. Chief Justice Kimberly Budd never saw being a justice of the Massachusetts Superior Court, let alone Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. as something that was in the cards for her. But when duty called, she answered, quote, I was sort of thrust into this. I didn't plan for it, and I had really big shoes to fill, and I was very clear about the fact that I was not going to be able to do all that my predecessor had done, unquote. She said, Bud filled the Chief Justice vacancy after the death of former Chief Justice Ralph Gantz, her mentor and friend, in September of 2020. Bud said she learned a lot from Gantz, especially around criminal and racial justice. Quote, he was very interested in criminal and racial justice, and as a white man, that was huge to have such an ally. The former U.S. attorney said, inspired by her mentor and her role as mother of 2 boys, Bud has been a major champion for restorative justice in the state of Massachusetts. Quote, one of the things that I decided I wanted to focus on was restorative justice, unquote. She figured, quote, a figure that will help with some of these sentencing disparities. We're getting ready to have some pilot programs in the Suffolk County, Plymouth County, and hoping that will make a difference. She further goes on to state that, bear with me here. The practice of restorative justice has been around for centuries, but has been picking up steam in recent times. Quote, restorative justice practices are very old. It's an indigenous tradition. She said, and it's important to me because as a mother of 2 boys, I know what it's like to say, quote, you have to understand what you've done. You can't do this, and here's why, unquote. And so that's what restorative justice is about. To make restorative justice work takes a lot of moving parts. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to perform restorative justice. The process takes cooperation from the offender, the victim, the prosecutors, defense attorneys, judges, and more. Quote, half of it's making sure that the offender understands the harm that he or she has caused. And it's also important for the victim to understand that the person who has committed the crime understands what harm they have caused the person. In our court system now, we all tell the defendant, quote, you don't have to speak. You don't have to say anything. And the victim doesn't have a whole lot to say in what happens. Quote, Bud said, restorative justice falls in line with Bud's belief that good communication can really solve a lot of problems. Recently, during a commencement address, she shared with Suffolk University College and Arts and Science graduates the importance of being open to the opinion of others. Quote, it's really important to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and see it from their perspective and be open to that. And that's something we do together in the consultation room. We're open to hearing what somebody else's thoughts are about the case, and so I may be persuaded by somebody I didn't agree with at the beginning or vice versa. And to be open to this is huge. If you were standing in your spot and saying, I'm not moving, it's more about whether or not you're moving and not about whether we get to the right answers, quote Bud shared. After practicing law for over 30 years, there's not much that surprises Bud. She's struck by how glad people are to see her around the courthouse. Quote, it's nice to know that they're happy that I've come. They all seem so dedicated, and that's really what makes our court system what it is. She said her presence is especially noticed by those in her courtroom who may not be used to seeing a black person on the bench. Quote, when I became a trial court judge, it was obvious that I might be just me and the defendant who are of color, and everybody else was not. I understand they're in a tough spot. They're having a tough time. But at least they see somebody who looks like them. I think that makes a difference. Obviously, that is me. So sorry, should have muted my phone. That's actually Dennis Everett, who was in the article that I spoke about, the director of restorative justice. When I became a trial, obvious court was up. So I tried to treat everybody with respect and make sure they know their case is important, but it's also nice just to have that representation, she said. And, this is something that's near and dear to me. As you all know, that Healing Our Land has a grant with Harvard University Falasha has been working with us, and as well as we have a meeting today with the president of the Boston City Council, Rusila June, as the city has now partnered with Healing Our Land.
Has now
Partnered with us officially, yes. And so now the Office of LGBTQ and Diversity and Inclusion, her name is Kimberly Roten, and she was at the Office of Returning Citizens, and now she's moved from that place, and she was a strong advocate for us and helped us to be able to get the grant that we got initially, that we were able to help a whole bunch of folks who were returning citizens. We're waiting to hear as we put in for another cycle of that, but now she's moved to a different capacity and still has really supports the work that we're doing in this new capacity. So she was able to advocate for us to get this small grant to be able to have the city officially partner with us. They'll be having their volunteers come in with us. We'll be going in. We had a teach-in last night, and we'll be getting ready. That was for the facilitators, and some of them are people who are returned citizens who've done restorative justice circles at MCI Norfolk. So we're looking at how our pedagogy is going to be, and it's going to be in restorative justice kinds of circles, and doing education that's interactive, not just didactic and not just boring information, but doing civic education. And we talked in our group particularly about focusing on young folks who are really not even of age to vote, as one of the gentlemen whose name is Armand Coleman, who's the director of a organization called Transformational Prison Project. And again, he and some other folks served time at MCI Norfolk. And it's interesting, now that these brothers are now out, and they're people who are, God is advancing them in positions of having their own organizations, and that they're working in leadership positions within government, i.e. the Executive Office of Public Safety. So it's really exciting for me, these restorative justice things that she talked about that are indigenous of our people as Indians, and their indigenous practices of Africans. And with colonization, they've been things that really become these systems of making a lot of money, but not really facilitating any restoration or any repairing of the harm, and just this vicious cycle of violence, and that has everything to do with money. One thing I'll lastly say is it was really interesting in the conversation last night as we talk about, we have a former president who we know has 32 convictions as a felony. And we understand that you can still run for office even as a convicted felon. And that's going to shift the whole conversation. As one of the goals of our grant with Harvard, and the name of the grant is Empowering Descendant Communities to Unlock Democracy. Let me say that again. Empowering descendant communities to unlock democracy. And I think it's interesting that the 13th Amendment says that slavery was abolished with the exception of those who've been convicted of a crime. So when we talk about empowering descendant communities, we're talking about black and brown and folks who are poor, folks who were considered slaves who are incarcerated. So to date, that Constitution is still in place. We talked about last night in our group, we know that the Constitution initially said that black people weren't even fully human. We were 3/5 human. That was amended, but that 13th Amendment remains intact. So the point is, you can be incarcerated, and here in Massachusetts, up until 2000, they had the right to vote. So for 24 years, that right was stripped from them. But now you'll have a person who was a former president who will be a convicted felon who can still run for office, and we need to work that we restore the rights that people who are serving convicted felonies can also exercise their right to vote in incarceral settings.
So the fact that the former president was convicted,
yes,
is a plus for what you're trying
absolutely,
to use it as an example?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to change the whole dynamic and the concept, because now it's not just black and brown and poor folks, but it's, a person who's literally the president of the United States, a powerful, rich European who has 32 convictions as a felon. So that's going to change the whole conversation, I would think, as we talk about restoring the rights for people to be able to vote for people, because you could always vote, you could always run for office as a convicted felon, but you can't vote for office if you are a convicted felon serving time in the state of Massachusetts.
For both you and Falasha, when I hear people say, black folks say, that I identify with former President Donald Trump because he was convicted, like I was convicted, is that something that alarms you when you hear black folk say, I'm going to support Donald Trump because he's more like me than the other candidate?
I mean, in that regard, for me, certainly.
Because it's being used, that's being used to help with the issue of restorative justice.
Correct. Well, yes and no. I mean, I think so for folks that, for me, restorative justice is a bigger conversation, right? So it's not, that's just a singular point. So when we go in, we're talking about the fact that people who are incarcerated, they actually now get free phone calls because African American Coalition Committee at MCI Norfolk wrote this piece of legislation that now gives you the right to be able to make a phone call, regardless of if you have the ability to be able to pay, right? We've got people who are running for the governor's council, a particular candidate who's a formerly convicted felon, right? Stacey Borden.
Yes, Stacey.
This is the only time that that's ever happened. So it's not just that, you can't, it's just the fact that we rethink how we think about people who have the right to vote. That should be something that is, universal suffrage. People should have the right to vote regardless of their conviction status. That's a fundamental right. That's really the point, right? So as it relates to people who relate, I understand what we're doing behind the wall and what we're doing with this whole statewide, because it takes literally a whole statewide ballot initiative, post 2 cycles of the House and the Senate to be able to pass this, right, for it to ultimately get restored. It's a long process, 2 years of a process that we now are working to be able to organize, have people who are directly impacted facilitate inside, outside mirror modeling to be able to do this across the entire country. So it's bigger than just the notion of, a fact that you can that maybe you resonate with a person whom was a convicted felon, because we're nonpartisan, right? So the goal is that we understand democracy. The goal is that we understand restorative justice in the whole framework, not just a person whom. That's one of the wonderful things that we're going to be doing with our civic education. When you've got people who are formerly convicted, black and brown folks, being able to go in and be able to, in really creative ways, talk about the bigger point of restorative justice, and not just the fact that one might resonate with a person who's a convicted felon, so that would be a single reason for you to be able to vote for a candidate.
Are you both going to City Hall to meet with the president of the Boston City Council?
It's actually going to be via Zoom.
It's going to be Zoom.
Yeah.
So could you both talk about that a little bit more? About what is it? What are you going to accomplish? Did she come to you and say, gee, I want the city council to be involved? Or are you going to present something to her?
Sure. So actually, Kimberly Roten, who actually, as I said, now works for she's the director of the Office of LGBTQ Diversity and Inclusion, right? So who has been a supporter of Healing Our Land when she was in a different capacity. Now she's in this capacity, and we have these meetings every Wednesday with a whole bunch of folks, with the director of social services for South Bay, the assistant deputy superintendent for Nashua Street, right, with Sophia Hall from the Lloyd's ACLU, right? So we've been having these meetings every week, right? And then we have meetings. We have that meeting on Wednesday about mobile ballot box initiative, and then we have a meeting on Monday night. That's a whole civic education committee. That's a part of the broader Democracy Behind Bars coalition. There's meetings on Friday. So there's all these different moving parts. And so Kimberly, who's been a part of this process, she took the initiative in her official capacity to reach out to Rusi, right, as the president of the city council, to be able to now get her on board, now that her office is officially in the city, the mayor's office is officially partners. Now the president of the city council potentially to introduce a hearing, right, to do a resolution, to be able to have testimony like we did with the state of emergency, right, what they did with the budget. So a whole process of now formalizing, really getting more people involved and aware of this whole mobile ballot box initiative with her leadership as the president. Finally, I'll say with the commissioner of the elections department, right, to be able to really more aggressively respond. We've had some conversations with the commissioner, and they're really trying to make sure that they do everything that is going to that's going to implement this whole Votes Act, but without being able to do anything that's going to compromise the office. So while we're doing this innovative model, so she's trying to do some research to be able to see what she can do, and yet, the ceiling rather than the floor, in terms of not just what you're obligated to do, but what can you do optimally to make sure that at this Votes Act is supposed to make sure that those who are incarcerated can exercise their right to vote, that infrastructure is in place, and they can be informed intelligently with whom, and mirroring what we have outside, that we have agency to cast our own ballot in our box. That's not the case as it stands. So we've made a lot of progress. The truth of the matter is they're still relegated to a case manager or a correctional officer to take their ballot and put it in the lobby in the drop box that now is there.
Okay, I want to ask a question about the Prime Minister in Jamaica, but before I go there, just to both of you, for me, as a news station, I was going to call the president of the Boston City Council and ask the question about the prayer being stopped at City Hall. And so, because you're associated with Boston Black News, if I go in and ask for a statement from the City Council president, does that put you in any kind of jeopardy?
No.
Her knowing that you're still associated with Boston Black News?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, she's very, very cognizant of the fact that Healing Our Land is a strong supporter as a participant and an endorser and a partner with Minister Flint and the Marcus Hall Anthony Civic Institute. Right, we're one of the partners, Healing Our Land, that's been a part of and participating and supporting and advocating. So even this letter that Falasha has created, we will. So she's already cognizant of, as you know, we've already. I've even opened up for her. She's invited me to come in and talking about taking that away, opening the prayer on Wednesdays before the City Council. So she's fully aware that Healing Our Land is a big supporter of that, and that should not come as any surprise to her.
So are you involved in this at all as far as the concern with prayer not being, so where are you at on it? Or what is your assignment and your role?
I guess my assignment is to push the envelope, I suppose, and create the emails and the letters that will be sent out.
Right, I saw a letter that came from you asking a comment on that. That's why I haven't commented, because I'm trying to figure out what not what my role is, but what the station's role should be in trying to help this out. And what I was going to do is just place the call and ask for the City Council president to go on record as to what their position is. So you have a letter that you're preparing.
That I have already shared with.
Okay.
So just quickly, on the prayer line every morning, we talk about whatever we're asking for prayer, and it came up and it didn't sit right with me. So I volunteered to create a letter, an email that we could share, and we send it out to our city council, to our mayor's office, I'd say even take it to the state house, to our state reps and our senators, and so that everyone's aware that this is not okay. And so that has kind of been my role in this. From a organization kind of standpoint. Individually, I'm surprised that this is even a conversation. Why aren't we able to pray at City Hall? It's a public building. It's for civic engagement, and I believe the First Amendment kind of covers that for everyone. So I don't know.
So has the letter been sent yet, or is it still?
Yeah. I've shared it with Minister Priscilla and some of the members that are on the prayer line, and they've used it. It's kind of like a form letter. You can change your city council, your city rep, your state rep, whomever, and share it. Also share it amongst within your circle, within your network. Share it and ask them to send it out as well.
Okay, then I probably should follow through on what it is that I felt the radio station should do. I would like to have another copy. Is there a final copy of that communication that I can use? Okay. Yeah. So you had mentioned something about the Prime Minister. You were applauding, getting all excited. Could you go back and
I sure
talk
can.
about that?
It was him looking at climate change resilience, I believe, because the Caribbean is believe it or not, probably a lot more vulnerable than they think they are. as far as climate change and how this is right now. I believe the Caribbean is, I believe, 5 degrees hotter or more than they usually are, which then creates an issue with the sea levels and infrastructure and electricity, more air conditioners, more AC. There's just a lot. And then they don't have, in the Caribbean, there aren't the same emission standards as there is here in the US, right? So there's just a lot of research that needs to take place and needs to be taken seriously. So I'm happy that now there's a budget that's allocated for that purpose. And this pilot program for climate resilience is very important because it's needed. It is absolutely needed. The population is growing, right? It's been stagnant for a while, but it's growing and it's very necessary. Oh, and the medical. That's what I was also applauding. The medical, for modernizing the hospitals and health centers. Like Jamaica, I want to go back to live in Jamaica when I get older, which is why I'm so health conscious now, because the health system there, if you do not have money to pay, then you will not be seen. And if you are seen, you have to go to like Kingston Public Hospital. You have to go to a public hospital where people are literally laying on gurneys in the hallways, waiting to be seen, and they're not being seen. Some people have passed away just waiting to be seen for something as simple as high blood pressure. And it's not simple. I take that back, because if you have high blood pressure, you need to be taking your medication. Mm-hmm. But that's something that wouldn't happen here unless you were not taking your medication, right? So there's a lot to be done. So I'm applauding him for this, particularly the 11 to 12 billion for major health infrastructure improvements, such as modernizing hospitals and health centers. That is a big plus for Jamaica. And then, of course, the climate change resilience, which is so important.
Have you folk been following the story regarding the Muslims who went to Mecca for their annual pilgrimage or pilgrimage to Mecca? The Muslims want to do that at least once in their lives, mm-hmm. and many of them have died trying to get to Mecca because of climate control.
Because of the heat.
Have you seen that story at all?
No.
I've seen the story, but I didn't read it, because on your phone you get the updates, but I didn't go into it to look at it. I just thought
that's something that I it would be great if we could put that on our agenda to talk
Absolutely.
about, because again, going to Mecca for a Muslim is an
it's
ultimate,
like being baptized.
Right. And the fact that people have died, many have died on their way because it's just too hot to make the pilgrimage. That's blowing my mind.
It is, and we're in the book of Jeremiah too, so I can go on with that, but I won't. It's unfortunate, and we took it for granted. And when Al Gore tried to bring it to our attention many years ago, right after Clinton ran, and he did his 2 terms, and then Al Gore tried to run, and his vote was stolen. I mean, he was not elected, and he was trying to bring that to our attention,
and they laughed at him.
Mm-hmm. And they thought he's talking foolishness. And now look at us, we're trying to play catch up. And if you're adding more pollution and you're adding more trash into a trash can and you're not emptying it, or you're not thinking about, then what do you think happens? It's the same with the climate. It's the same with the cars, the ACs, the technology. I love technology, don't get me wrong, but and traveling, the planes. There's so much that we could do better with, that we just didn't. If we had just listened to Al Gore, how many years ago was that? I was 20-something years ago.
They thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
They didn't listen to him, and he tried as best he could,
mm-hmm.
and it failed.
Yeah, we failed. By not listening to him, we failed.
Do you have anything else to share with us?
Of course I do. Let's see. Do we want to talk about we already talked about that last week, the undocumented immigrant spouses and children of U.S. citizens. The presidential election polls, recent polls indicate that the former President Donald Trump is leading over President Joe Biden in several key states. For instance, in Missouri, Trump leads Biden by 15 points. And in Georgia, he leads by 8 points. These polls also show independent candidates like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Green Party candidate Jill Stein drawing some support, but not enough to significantly impact the top two candidates. And that's from Real Clear Polling.
Did you mentioned Robert Kennedy?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that he is a plant to support Donald Trump over against being serious about running for presidency? There's just no way in the world that he could conceive that he has a chance at becoming the president. Isn't he going to take votes away from Biden?
Okay, but yes, but for now, until they make that distinction. But my thing is, nobody could conceive that Donald Trump was going to be the president of the United States of America. At this point, I should run. If Donald, I know that doesn't, but think about it.
Well, he didn't think he was going to be able to
win,
to win at the first time.
Probably not.
Pastor Hobbs and I let's go back on that. So Pastor Hobbs and I were in the studio that night. Yes. And Pastor Hobbs was sitting here, I was sitting over there, and we were just waiting. We just knew that Donald Trump was not going to win. And I was exhausted. I don't know if I went over to the corner and took a nap or if I went home. I think I stayed.
I think we all stayed.
You stayed here. When I woke up, Donald Trump was the president of the United States.
Correct. I actually, I do think that he absolutely thought he was going to win. We may have not thought he was going to win, and he did not win the popular vote. He was very strategic and brilliant in focusing on the Electoral College. So that was the reason we were looking at the popular votes. We're looking at these votes coming in. No one fought to even think about the Electoral College. So that was brilliant, and that was very strategic what he did. So I do believe he was very strategic and did intend to win. I don't think it surprised him that he won. I don't. That's just my sense. It may have surprised us because, again, the popular vote was what we all were looking at.
It's funny because he has said on numerous occasions back then and even to today, in telling the story, maybe it's a good narrative, and that's why he's saying it, that he didn't think that he was going to win.
Oh.
But again, that may have just been a good narrative to say how he came from behind. I never thought. I was looking at the popular vote. I wasn't looking at the other vote. And as we move toward this race, for example, I am going to watch the debate on Thursday.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure I'm up and I'm watching because that's going to be interesting. When I saw Joe Biden being led off of the stage by the former president, grabbing him and helping to walk him off the stage, they were saying that the president was only putting his arm around him to show affection. But the way that I saw it, it looked like Joe Biden didn't know where he was going and how to get there. And Barack Obama helped him off the stage. Are you folk concerned about his emotional, cognitive status at this time? Or you think it's just a news comment that's being made to create another story?
I kind of saw that I'm going to say that I think it's another news story it's another news story to create doubt in our minds and to make us question his ability and capability. But the reality is, right, I want to correct something. My bad. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't think that Trump is strategic. Whoever he has on his team. His team
one of the
is
same for me.
No, it's because I would not give Trump that much credit to have that much. But he has a great team.
Again,
right?
To me, that your team is.
We can agree to disagree.
We can,
Great.
and I can articulate what I'm trying to convey.
We've been here before.
What that is the fact that again, your team. Your team is the people, right? Yes, it's not him. No, it never is a person. That's a person, but you create your team, right?
And that's
so,
my point with Biden as well. So,
and I'm in agreement, 300%.
if he's, whether there's doubt on his capability or not, he has
That's
a
right.
phenomenal team.
Absolutely.
So either way, I think that's a news story that
I agree.
is
I
just
agree.
to create doubt.
I agree. And I would submit the truth of the matter is they're both old, right? They're both candidates are old. So this is just this notion of, and again, to her point, there's a team. It's not ever that one person. Thanks be to God that that's the way our systems are set up. This is not a monarchy, right? It's a democracy, right? So there's a whole system in place that supports this person who actually is the representative, but they don't do that single-handedly. And so even regardless of whatever one's cognitive ability, and they both are older men. So I think it's just news.
I have heard from not a reliable source, but people who are politically aware
Yeah.
of what's going on,
Yeah.
that as we get closer to the election, that they're saying that Joe Biden, because it's around his son, is going to step out of the race
Okay.
and say that I want to be with my family, and that they're preparing to bring another Democratic candidate out.
Really? Do we know who
Have
that
you?
is?
No, there's been no names mentioned. They're not talking about the vice president being the person
No.
either. Have you heard that at
No.
all?
I have not. heard
Would it
that.
surprise you if something like that happened?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, do you think the Democrats would have to call? They would lose the race if they did something like that.
Not necessarily.
It depends on who they bring forward.
Correct.
Who could they bring forward at this time?
I mean, who knows? Only God knows, right? Who knows? We have no idea. They may pull someone out that might totally surprise and garner a whole lot of support. I mean, I have no idea who, but that's anything's conceivable, right? So that I have not heard that, but that is a strategy that could make some sense. And I don't think they would lose if it's a person who's a strong enough candidate. And some folks are just loyal to party, right? Regardless. If it's a D, they're going to go for it. If it's an R, they're going to go for it. They're not even thinking about the candidate.
Yeah, well, I am going to watch this debate because I think that is going to be a real test of where these two men are in this race, because with them turning the mics off, so that they can't speak over each other, not having an audience, which is what Donald Trump plays to, the audience. It's going to be interesting to watch both of them go neck to neck and to see if they're going to be able to articulate their position with clarity and really make sense. Do you folk feel that the debate is going to be significant, or do you think it's not that important at this time?
For me, the debate is always important and always significant. But with Donald Trump in it, it kind of it diminishes the value and the importance of it to me, but I'll watch it just to see or hear what foolery he's going to say, to be honest with you, and what sound bites that people will be able to get to kind of make fun of him and the memes that will follow after. But
I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, but I am going to be looking at Joe Biden because I want to know that if this man becomes the president of the United States, that he's going to be able to provide that leadership. When I saw him fall twice, once going up the stairway into the plane, and there was another time he was at a major event. He's fallen about 3 times. Those things have troubled me, and I've said to myself, man, why don't you just call it quits, because it seems like you're in a tough position. You don't see that at all in his. And again, I'm not supporting Donald Trump, but I guess I'm concerned about both of them.
One for and the other one for but I don't know. What are our options? What do we do at this point? We don't have unless God is going to provide that ram in the bush, what are we going to do?
Which is what you were saying basically a few minutes ago, that you don't know who could come out, but it's in God's hands, is what you're saying.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And let me say for the record, I too am not a Republican or a Democrat, right? So I am a person who's going to make a decision based upon the candidate, right? So I'm independent. I think that's just my posture, and as one who facilitates, civic engagement, I'm always going to be neutral, right? And being able to encourage people to understand that it's important to exercise your civic duty. It's important for you to understand the candidates' platforms and restorative justice in the context of everything that we have worked for, where we are and where there's a movement to push us back, as opposed to we just celebrated Juneteenth, right? It shows really how far we really need to go, right? And how short window of time we've gotten to really where we are, right? And it's not been that long since slavery, right? It hasn't been that long. And it's interesting because Jewish people will say, never forget, right? Where we've got folks who really never even know, never mind forgetting, because it's not a history that's necessarily taught. And
Correct.
people want to just, kumbaya, and we're here, and they don't understand the sacrifices that our ancestors made for us to have the conveniences and the luxuries that we have. And so taking that for granted and not exercising that right to vote and being informed, there's people who want to push us further back. So doing that education is the piece I think that's important, particularly for those who are disproportionately impacted by incarceral, who are over-policed, over-sentenced, under-resourced. So that's my mindset, right? So, but with that said, ultimately, we as believers, and I'm grateful that this platform is on a Christian station, right? So while we're giving people information and education, we know that our confidence is in the government rests upon God's chosen Jesus' kingdom.
No matter who wins.
No matter who. We're going to pray for those who are in authority, right? So I think it's important to be engaged and aware, but to be prayerful. More so than anything, because God will bring them up and God will bring them down. God will provide the ram in the bush. And it's all about us as the people of God doing our part to pray.
During the COVID crisis, Pastor Hobbs and I sat at the studio, and I don't know if it was a day of fasting that we had, or a couple of days of fasting, and people were calling in, and
powerful.
we were just praying for
24 hours.
24 hours.
Pastors
prayer.
were calling in, and people, and again, this platform, I look at, Boston Praise Radio and TV Network as a prophetic, like the ark of this dispensation, right? Like, so this is a vehicle that God created in every single dispensation that God is always trying to preserve life. As Philosopher said on the prayer line in the morning, we're talking about Jeremiah, right? And it talked about judgment coming to Babylon. Babylon are worldly systems, right? So we know about Noah and the ark, right? We know about Sodom and Gomorrah. We know that God is always about preserving life, but righteous life, right? There's always a remnant. So I think in this dispensation, technology, though people demonize technology, even the church, right? And now everybody embraced technology post-COVID, and some don't want to even return back to community that's necessary, not understanding it's a tool, but it's not something to replace community, right? So I think with this vehicle, we were able to have 24 hours a day, pastors calling in from different churches, and 24 hours a day, we were able to have this concert of prayer that was recorded and could continue. And I would submit that was something that actually stemmed the tide and pushed back, because people were dropping like it was. I mean, we can't forget how devastating COVID was, and the stacking of bodies. I mean, just really people were scared, and we as essential entities, being the media, right? We were here every day, while other entities were shut down, and we're in the church. So we continue to be the church even during COVID, and never missed a beat because of the prophetic vision that God gave you.
You said, Pastor Hobbs, that Falasha was saying something on the prayer line about...
No, I think he was just saying that I mentioned that we're reading Jeremiah on the prayer line.
Well, I am hearing what you're saying, and again, I don't want to promise or make a comment about wanting to do something and not be able to do it. But I think that somewhere around, if I was on my toes, I would have said, we needed to come together to pray prior to the debate. And to speak to the churches in our city, to watch it and to pray. But after the debate, there might be something that we see that could become a theme for us as the church to make an intentional decision that we're going to be involved in this process, but it's going to be around fasting and praying.
Yes.
You talked about fasting the other day. Where was that coming from?
I don't know. I just felt like it came to me when I was like, I think maybe right after the prayer, I was thinking like, in addition to the prayer line, I wonder if we could fast. And then I remembered the first fast that I did that was very effective for me and was my introduction to fasting was here at GMCC. And it was, I think it was around Easter, if I'm not mistaken. And you gave us parameters, and obviously some people had medical reasons why they couldn't do a complete fast, whatever you were comfortable with. And I just think that's important to do as, corporately. So that's why I just thought and that